The Sith mandate of the Rule of Two has been an important aspect that has carried over from Legends to canon, with Sidious commenting so many times in Star Wars canon that there can only ever be two true Sith. With that said, the reality of the Rule of Two is something that has been muddled in Star Wars canon, even more so at this point than it was in Star Wars Legends, or at least approaching that same level of change. We know that the Sith such as Dooku had dark side acolytes in canon, first Asajj Ventress, then later Savage Opress, and the individuals have claimed to be Sith Lords themselves, such as of course Savage and later Maul, but it seems like the Rule of Two has been very consistent. There are only ever two true Sith Lords in the galaxy at a single time, a master to hone the power and an apprentice to covet and desire after it. It was after the rise of Skywalker that a lot of details about the Sith Rule of Two were altered indefinitely. The Force dyad was something that was introduced in the rise of Skywalker, where two beings exceptionally strong and powerful in the Force share a connection with one another, and that connection simply amplifies their ability to tap into and utilize the Force. I'm of course referencing both Rey and Kylo Ren, as it was the power of the two of them that restored Palpatine at the end of the Rise of Skywalker. It was revealed in the novelization for the movie that this is the meaning behind the Sith Rule of Two, beyond a lot of the other logistics that we've discussed before that we'll also briefly touch on later in the video. Anyway, the Rule of Two was basically implemented, as explained in the novel, to promote the creation of this Force dyad, and that the Sith actually seek after the creation of this dyad, as that is when Force wielders meet their peak. We know still in Star Wars canon that it was Darth Bane that began the Rule of Two, explaining that there are only ever two true Sith Lords at a given time. But now, the meaning of the Rule of Two has been changed yet again thanks to Darth Vader number 11, and thanks to a lot of the Sith cultists in the Rise of Skywalker. The Sith cultists that aren't really explained in the movie at all. And now, a lot of the expanded works over at Lucasfilm are attempting to do the heavy lifting of telling the story of these cultists, mainly the Darth Vader comic book series and the Rise of Skywalker novelization. In the Rise of Skywalker novelization, it was explained that these Sith cultists were basically one level below Sith Lords, and that none of them really had the potential to become Sith, but rather worshipped Palpatine, making sure that his spirit remained safe within the clone body. There were no intention of any of these Sith cultists to one day become true Sith Lord. It's even shady in fact if any of the cultists have the ability to use the Force at all, although it's presumed that some of them do, just on a level far lesser than that of a true Sith. Darth Vader number 11 though, which shows Vader exploring Exegol, takes a much different approach to the Sith cultists that are introduced in the Rise of Skywalker, as Palpatine basically explains that he has limitless potential for brand new apprentices, and that any of these Sith cultists could take Vader's place. But this raises massive questions for Star Wars canon if any of these Sith cultists and worshippers had the potential to become Sith themselves, and they were actually encouraged to stand out and kill other cultists in order to draw the attention of the true Sith Lords, meaning that when Palpatine says that there are only ever two true Sith Lords at once, you have to take this literally, and that essentially there could be thousands of Sith, but only two Lords of the Sith, which is super confusing and an addition to Star Wars canon that I don't really like. I think it's fine if Palpatine trained acolytes of the dark side of the Force, but not really these lower class Sith as it's being explained in Vader 11 in the Rise of Skywalker novel. This sort of breaks Star Wars and the way that Palpatine himself operates. The biggest question for me is if Palpatine had nearly endless resources and Sith, why would he scour the galaxy for other apprentices before Vader? It makes sense of course why Palpatine would want Anakin Skywalker as his apprentice, but why would he search throughout the stars for an individual like Maul and later Dooku? If he had near limitless options of Sith cultists right at his disposal, why did he travel to Dathomir in search of Maul? And why did he accept Dooku as his Sith apprentice? Dooku of course makes more sense than Maul, but again this also raises more questions, like where were these Sith cultists when Order 66 was being executed? And why weren't these cultists utilized against the Jedi? Why do you even need Inquisitors when these Sith cultists are around? Couldn't they fulfill the role of an Inquisitor? With these thousands of Sith Lords present on Exegol, this literally breaks the true meaning behind the Sith Rule of Two and why it was implemented in the first place. Darth Bane implemented the Rule of Two to stop all of the infighting among the Sith. There were simply too many Sith Lords at a single time, and the fact that they coveted their own power and knowledge for their own, not sharing it with the wider order, which as a result stunted the power and growth of the Sith as an order entirely. That is why Darth Bane explained that there should only ever be two, and that the knowledge between the master and apprentice should be shared openly, to the point when the apprentice eventually eclipsed the power of the master, they should then become the one true Dark Lord. It doesn't make sense that the rule of two basically means that all other Sith would be demoted, and timeline-wise it doesn't make a lot of sense, as we don't know when the Sith Eternal were established. They could be something that was formed after the rule of two, as it wouldn't make sense if they were something that was formed before. Again, in the Darth Vader comic book, as well as in The Rise of Skywalker, it's explained that these are sort of lower class Sith, but are still true Sith. And while there are only ever two true Sith Lords, in order to promote a Force dyad, these Sith Eternal are Sith. This completely shatters the rule of two, and I think one of the worst parts is this will likely never be explored anywhere else besides the novelization for The Rise of Skywalker or Darth Vader, and we'll likely see stuff like the rule of two implemented in shows like The Acolyte. It's just confusing for the sake of being confusing, and is becoming even more convoluted in an attempt to clear up The Rise of Skywalker and the lore introduced in that movie. It's a little bit frustrating, but I understand why. I just wish that they would pick a true explanation and meaning behind the rule of two and stick to it. I don't know why it keeps having to be altered and changed. The original meaning of the rule of two made sense. A master to hold the power and an apprentice to seek it out. When the apprentice eclipses the power of the master, the apprentice becomes the master and takes on an apprentice of their own. That makes sense. You don't really need to add to it. Anyway though, I would love to hear your thoughts on this as always, guys. How do you feel about this? Again, this is an aspect of the Darth Vader comic book series that I really don't like. Other than this, I think the series is pretty well written and pretty good overall. But I still think that the constant changes of the rule of two need to be brought to attention and highlighted. If I'm misinterpreting something, please leave it in the comments down below. I'm completely open to hearing your own interpretations of the rule of two and how The Rise of Skywalker changes this. As always though, my friends, thank you so much for watching. May the Force be with you, and have a great day.